Welcome back to Space to Lead and the Collaborative Coaching series. Over the last few episodes, Suzanne, Fox, and I have been building a complete picture about what effective collaboration actually requires. We began with collaborative readiness, looking at whether individuals and systems are truly prepared to work together, and then moved into the essential conditions of trust and psychological safety. Today we're shifting our focus to a different question. How mature is the collaboration itself? You see, collaboration isn't an on and off switch. It's a journey that develops, strengthens, and reveals itself more clearly under pressure. We often use the word collaboration to describe almost any interaction, from sharing a document to attending a meeting, but these activities require very different levels of maturity. In this episode, we're going to explore that maturity and the collaborative capacity that teams have or don't, and how this is really a fluid continuum that moves through 5 distinct levels: coordination, cooperation, collaboration, collective performance, and collaborative excellence. Our goal today is to help you identify where your team sits on this journey and how to build the capacity to move toward greater impact.
Welcome to Space to Lead, the podcast where leaders and teams come together to learn, grow, and thrive. Each episode brings fresh insights and real conversations with leaders and industry experts who are shaping the future of leadership. We explore strategies to build dynamic, engaging cultures, whether you're leading from the front or making an impact within your team. So take a deep breath, make some space, and let's lead together.
Welcome back to the Collaborative Coaching series. Over the past few episodes, Suzanne and I have been building a picture of what effective collaboration actually requires. We started with collaborative readiness, whether individuals, teams, projects, organizations, or systems are prepared to work together. We then explored trust, psychological safety, and the conditions that allow people to tell the truth, make decisions, and repair when things go wrong. Today, we want to talk about something a little bit different. How mature is the collaboration itself? Because collaboration is not an on and off switch. It develops, it strengthens, it grows, and under pressure, it reveals how much capacity has actually been built within the team or system.
Oh, David, I love this topic because such a juicy one. And that last point you made really matters. Most organizations say they collaborate. They have cross-functional meetings. They share information. People help one another. They may even have a collaboration listed as an organizational value. But those activities do not necessarily mean that people are operating collaboratively. And you and I see this. Because what we see are sometimes people are coordinating, they're cooperating, sometimes they're genuinely collaborating, and sometimes they are functioning as an integrated system that can adapt, make decisions, and deliver results together. But we both know those are very different levels of capability. So that is what our collaborative capability journey helps us see, actually. We could call it a journey, we can call it a continuum. The reality is that it's really fluid and it's constantly shifting. And it moves through 5 levels. And they're coordination, cooperation, collaboration, collective performance, and collaborative excellence. So as the capability of collaboration matures, we see an increase in trust, we see an increase in alignment, we see an increase in integration, and of course, what we're always looking for is impact.
Yeah, so true. And it's such a great model because I think it helps teams to see with more clarity where they're sitting today. It's not about good, bad, right, or wrong, but it's more identifying it and determining where do we want to be and how do we get there. So it's that almost that sort of name it to tame it kind of idea.
Yeah, I love that.
I think one of the reasons that collaboration is difficult to improve is that, quite frankly, we use the word to describe almost everything. We're in a meeting and we're collaborating. We share a document and we're collaborating. We call another department and ask them for input. And oh, guess what? We're collaborating. But these actions require very different levels of independence. And that different work requires different levels of maturity. So not every interaction needs to reach collaborative excellence. Maybe if I just need a piece of information from you, coordination may be completely appropriate. The problem, though, is that when the work is complex and highly interdependent, but the people are still operating through that sort of information exchange level, individual relationships or isolated decision-making, it gets a little bit messy. So the work requires collaboration, but the system's only capable of coordination. And then we start to see friction.
Ooh, so true, right? And I love that word friction. I guess you could call it tension. I guess you could just call it outright avoidance sometimes. But yes, friction is something that often I think we misdiagnose. When we say people need to communicate better, we actually schedule another meeting, or we escalate the issue, or we tell people to be more collaborative. Guilty as charged as a leader. You need to be collaborative on this project, but really how? So you can't just instruct a team or a system into that maturity, because there's capabilities at each level that may not yet exist that need to be actually worked on. We can't demand shared accountability if people do not share clarity. You can't expect decisions to be integrated and when we have two teams where priorities and incentives are pulling people in opposite directions. And you can't expect people to adapt together if they don't trust one another to speak up. Maturity has to be built on so many levels.
Yeah, so true, so true. And you and I could probably go on and talk about this a lot and share examples and whatnot. Maybe at this point, the thing to do is to give our listeners a little bit more of a deeper understanding of each of the 5 levels.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Let's do that.
Perfect. So just to remind everyone, we're talking through the 5 levels of collaborative maturity or capability: coordination, cooperation, collaboration, collective performance, and collaborative excellence. And as we talked about, it's a bit of a continuum. We can move in and out of these spaces. And Suzanne, maybe I'll kick it off and talk about coordination.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So at this level, as we talked about earlier, people are exchanging information. They're providing updates, they're completing their tasks, and they're also trying to stay informed about what others are doing, but probably at a little bit of a base level. Coordination is often structured around handoffs. I'll do my part, you do yours, and then we'll try and connect all the pieces together. It's not inherently bad. For straightforward or loosely connected work, that's maybe all that we need, as we sort of alluded to earlier. But work often still happens in silos. So alignment is minimal, trust may be low or largely untested. Communication tends to be more reactive. You send me a request, I respond to that request. People are sharing information when it's requested, when an issue arises, or when a formal reporting set requires it. However, the risk is that everyone can complete all their individual responsibilities and the collective outcome can still fail. Each piece may be delivered, but the pieces don't fit together. So this is where we might hear things like, well, I sent the email. I told you about that a month ago. I did my part. Or that decision belongs with Suzanne's team. Sorry, just call you out there a little bit. Technically, that may be correct, but no one's holding the whole system. So the development focus is simple but important. Share information consistently and stay informed. Build enough visibility that people are not repeatedly surprised by one another. So that's coordination. Do you want to take us through level 2, cooperation?
I do. And I want to just say one thing, because as you were talking, I have this visualization of, those pictures you see where hands of teams are putting puzzle pieces together, but they're not quite yet together.
Oh, yeah.
I was visualizing that. So I just thought I would share that with the audience. Just so see that. Yeah, so many people use that as a team thing, and the pieces of the puzzle are not quite connected. So that's for me a visual of coordination. Everybody's doing their part, but they're not quite connected yet.
Beautiful.
Anyways, I digress. Let's go to level 2, cooperation, which is people start to begin to help one another. So they respond when asked. They may step outside the formal responsibilities to support a colleague or solve a problem. Relationships, in this sense, really begin to matter more. Cooperation often feels good. It feels positive because there's goodwill. For the feeler in me, it's like, this is where I want to head to. There may be strong one-to-one relationships. Someone says, call me if you need anything, and they genuinely mean that. But cooperation is still frequently dependent on individual initiative. So the system works because particular people are willing to help, not because collaboration is built into the how the work operates. And if that relationship changes, the person leaves, or pressure increases, that cooperation may disappear.
Yeah.
Key, right? You think about projects where, I always used to say to my team, there's always the same 5 people that step up, but then they get burnt out and then it stops.
Mm-hmm.
So it can become very exhausting for those types of cooperative relationships. So you start relying on the same trusted people to bridge every gap. They translate between departments. They repair misunderstandings. They might chase information. They kind of hold together a system that is not yet learned to hold itself together. So at this stage, the question shifts from what information do you need from me to what do you need in order to succeed? Such a great coaching question.
Oh, it is. It is. And as you're talking, I'm starting to hear a glimpse of people working towards shared goals. So, that puzzle piece that you talked about, things are starting to collect a little bit more.
Yeah.
So it feels like we're shifting maybe into level 3, which is collaboration.
Yeah, take it over.
Yeah. So this is where people begin working towards shared goals. Communication can become more open. Different perspectives are actively brought into the conversation, maybe even sought out. Please tell me more about what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Accountability becomes more shared. And we start to shift from that individual piece that we talked about in the first 2 levels to a space where problems are more solved together rather than sort of handed back and forth. And this is an important transition. At the first 2 levels, people are primarily managing connections in a sense between these separate pieces of work or those puzzle pieces that you talked about earlier. At the collaboration level, they begin shaping the work together. So it's no longer just exchanging information after a decision's been made. They're making sense of the situation together before deciding. I think that's actually an important one. I'm going to say it again. They're making sense of the situation together before deciding. I think that's a real hallmark of when a system is starting to be more collaborative. And this is something that requires more trust, because when you get into that space where now we're doing this together, there's a potential of more vulnerability. I have to be open to you influencing my thinking. I might need to change how I do things or how I view a situation. I might need to acknowledge that my team's priorities aren't coming first. Yeah, I know. Right away, I sort of think about even our work together, how, a lot of my work has been a solopreneur. And, this bringing someone else into your space and that vulnerability as you start to collaborate, it's a real thing. And even more important, while all this change and all this movement is happening, we have to remain engaged even if we disagree with one another. So it's important to note, because this idea of we have to engage even if we disagree. Collaboration at this level, it's not always about getting along. It's about us being able to work through differences without immediately retreating into silos, self-protection, circling the wagons, reacting. So it's really this space where shared accountability is something real, and we're moving away from coordination and cooperation, which is all about who owns the problem, and more about what is our responsibility for the outcome in this situation.
Oh, I just love that so much, because I think when teams get to this place about group ownership or together ownership and accountability, magic really happens. So I'm going to move us to level 4, collective performance, if that's okay.
Sorry, were you looking for a transition from me? I apologize.
No, it's all good. So collective performance, people begin operating as that integrated system we've been talking about, right? So teams and functions are no longer simply contributing as those silos or those separate areas of expertise. They're combining all of that expertise to make better decisions and produce results that none of them could ever deliver independently. And I'm sure that's people are listening to that and going, well, yeah, easier said than done. Well, that's why we're talking about a level of maturity, because it is about letting go, being vulnerable in this space so you can produce decisions together. And this is actually where collaboration becomes visible in performance. So decisions are made with an understanding of the whole system, that lens that takes me outside my own little lane. People anticipate the impact of their actions on other groups. Information travels to where it's needed, not only through the formal hierarchy. And what I love in this stage is trust is strong enough that concerns can be raised early. And then when the conditions change, people adapt together, that rather than protecting their own plan or their own agenda. or their own direction they've been given. They start to have different levels of conversation. And so what we see there is this level of resilience that starts to increase. So when there is a setback, it doesn't automatically fracture the collaboration. The system can absorb it, can bounce around in it, they can learn, and it can respond. So this level really reminds me of how we work when we're facilitating together, David. So at that coordination level, you and I divide the agenda. You take a section, I take another. We hand the room back and forth, maybe kind of like we're doing today. But at a collaboration level, we co-design the session and contribute to each other's thinking. And I think we have learned to move into that space to support each other, to push each other in different areas using our own expertise, then coming together. But collective performance happens when we both are tracking the room, the purpose, the energy, and each other in real time. You noticing my energy might be low, me noticing your energy might be low, and supporting each other. So one of us shifts the direction so the other can see why and help. We help each other through that and carry each other through that. So we're not abandoning structure. We're using our combined awareness in service of the outcome we're trying to achieve. And that's key, right? Success is no longer measured by what you did well, what I did well. It's measured by whether we, in our collaboration, are delivering to our clients as a whole, seeing the system.
Yeah. And I love you said delivering to our clients, and I would add modeling for our clients so they can understand what level 5 is, what it looks like, collaborative excellence. They can see it in action. Yeah. So level 5, collaborative excellence, this is, the pinnacle. Collaboration is no longer dependent on you, no longer dependent on me, on a single leader, an initiative, or that exceptional group of people that you talked about earlier. It's embedded into the culture and the systems of the organization. People consistently deliver through trust, alignment, adaptability, shared accountability. And the interesting thing is that they're not only solving the problems of today together, they're building a foundation and co-creating what's going to happen in the future. So regardless, to your point, whether I leave or I have other things on my plate, the system continues to operate and function effectively. And it's interesting, I used that word pinnacle a minute ago, and actually I shouldn't have, because there's not really an end point. This is a bit of a continuum, as we talked about earlier. We're continuously learning. We're continually challenging assumptions that we may have. And that's necessary, because you and I know we're living in complex times where change is happening at a rapid pace. So there's never a point where we can stop and say, yeah, I think I got it and I can coast from here. We always have to be looking beyond the immediate towards the future and what's coming. Collaborative excellence also raises the capability of the broader system, because as we get better at working together, the organization itself gets better at working, across silos within different areas of the organization, with their partners, their communities, contractors, stakeholders. It doesn't simply perform well within its own boundaries. It's the whole broader system. So I think that's, sometimes folks will have sort of 4 levels, we're collaborating, great, and we stop there. But often that's within a contained environment. And I think that's the differentiator of the 5 levels here, is that collaborative excellence is going beyond borders. As we talk about this, though, and we've alluded to it already, but it doesn't mean everything is always sunshine and rainbows and unicorns. Can you tell I have twin girls at home talking about sunshine and unicorns? We're never in this perfect state where everything's good. There's always going to be disagreement. There's always going to be competing pressures, mistakes, disruption. I think about the past few years, kind of politically what's going on in the world, and even just the tariff conversation. A project where everything was going well, and then suddenly some of your key parts are coming from somewhere and tariffs are involved. Suddenly prices are changing, and that can inject some uncertainty into a project. So there's always things happening, but when we get to this state of collaborative excellence, the system has developed the capability to work through some of those challenges and realities. People know how to surface the tension as it emerges, how to make trade-offs, how to repair relationships, keep learning, but most importantly, keep moving forward. So I think if we were to kind of summarize all that I just said in a quick statement, collaborative excellence is not about perfection. It's the ability to remain collaborative when conditions are imperfect.
Yeah. And, just thinking about David, again, back to your and my blossoming partnership and how we daily move through this continuum, and talk to each other about how we're going to move something forward. And what I love is we were able to get to that trust level very quickly and absolutely know that it's never going to be harmonious all the time. And we have to keep pushing forward because we believe in the same outcomes.
Yeah. So true. So this is great. We've talked about the 5 levels, given a little bit more of a descriptor of what are some of the things that could show up at each of those levels. And our listeners may be wondering, well, that's great, but what do I do with that information? And I think similar to coaching and similar to a lot of the conversations we have, the first step is, where am I at today? What's going on in my world? When I look at my team and how we interact, what are some of the behaviors I notice? When I look at how my team interacts with, marketing over there or whatever, what are some of the dynamics that exist? When I look at some of our relationships with external stakeholders, what are some of the dynamics that exist? And do a real honest self-evaluation and assessment.
So, David, if I can just jump in here, I think that's where collaborative coaching fits.
Thanks for rescuing me, Suzanne.
That's okay. That's where we're role modeling in real time, right? Honestly, that's because of who you and I are and what we believe in, and the work we're doing is trying to help individuals, teams see things through patterns that they may be currently creating or may have been created years ago that are still there that nobody really knows why. So it's not like you and I want to come in and fix things, because you and I both know that's not possible, or nor is that what we want to do. But we're able to see patterns and help others, either in a one-on-one, in a team, or from an ecosystem perspective, see where does information stop? Where is the accountability fragmented? Which relationships are carrying too much of the system? And I love this one. What happens when there's disagreement? That really can tell an organization what level of maturity they're at. What structures or incentives are pulling people back into their silos, right? And then we work with the people, you and I, through our collaborative coaching group, to actually see the system and build the capabilities to get through that maturity. And so it's important, right? We help build awareness, improve relationships. Maybe it's setting up agreements, practices that allow them to operate differently. And I want to just say, break patterns that people don't even know they have.
Oh, so true. So true.
Right? Like they just don't know. And I can't wait for our next podcast, because we're going to talk about patterns. So it really is about bringing others into the space that can watch and observe and interject and support and ask good questions about what's happening right now. With that level of awareness, people can actually start to see things different, hear different perspectives, and that progression of moving through the maturity of collaboration, which is key.
Gosh, I love that. Yeah, and patterns, boy, that's something I love talking about. So I'm looking forward to that conversation as well.
Yeah.
So this is probably a nice transition point for us to bring the conversation to a close. And we'd like to get our listeners to do a little bit of reflecting and noticing. Think about a collaboration that's important to you. It could be a leadership team, a project, a partnership, or maybe work that crosses multiple organizations. Where would you place yourself on the collaborative continuum today? Are you at the coordination level, cooperation, collaboration, collective performance, or collaborative excellence? And as you think about what level you're at, let's say you're at cooperation, think about what evidence supports that answer. Look at how people communicate, how decisions are made, how accountability is held, and most importantly, what happens under pressure, and whether people protect their own part or remain responsible for the whole. So some really good questions to be thinking about as you think about where are we currently. It's not easy work because, as Suzanne alluded to, there's a lot of patterns and history and memory in our team and in our organization that can get in the way. Because of that, Suzanne and I have developed a collaborative readiness assessment. If you're curious and want to learn more, reach out. We'd love to help you surface some of those patterns and intentionally choose where you want to go next.
You know what? I just want to add one thing, David. Collaboration maturity is not about where you start. It's actually about how you grow together. And I think that's a really, really important part. Stay out of your silos, stay in the mess, stay in the discussion in order to get to that collaborative excellence space.
As always, thank you, Suzanne. I love these conversations. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you've missed any of our previous episodes, be sure and check them out on your favorite podcast provider. And stay tuned as we start to talk about patterns.
As we bring this conversation to a close, we want to leave you with a final thought. Collaborative excellence is not about perfection. It's about the ability to remain collaborative even when conditions are imperfect, staying in the discussion and the mess rather than retreating into silos. If you find your team is stuck in old patterns or struggling to move to the next level of maturity, we've developed a collaborative readiness assessment to help you surface those hidden dynamics and intentionally choose your next steps. Thank you for joining Suzanne and I today. If you've missed any part of this series or any of our other Space to Lead podcast episodes, you can find us on your favorite podcast provider. We'll continue the conversation, diving into the world of patterns and how they shape the way we work together.